Okay, guys, I had to post this story 3 times now. Hopefully, this time I will get it right. I'm pretty new to posting stories, but here it goes. To start off, this isn't my story, but rather one that my dad told me about my Uncle Edward. My Uncle Edward died from pneumonia back in 2014. I was born, but was way too young to remember anything about my Uncle Edward, except for the sight of his lifeless body laying in his casket. The sight is now burned into my mind. Later on, my dad, my uncles, my brother told me that my uncle was an alcoholic and drug addict. My uncle's addiction caused him to lie and steal from my dad and other members of my family. My dad had told me stories about my Uncle Edward, some good, some bad. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the most scariest stories I've ever heard regarding my uncle. This took place at some point in the late 90s, before I was born. My uncle and my dad were living with my nana at the time. My dad noticed that the windows on his Ford Escort were shattered. Suspecting my uncle had something to do with it, my dad confronted him about it. My uncle lied and said that kids were responsible. My dad knew that was a load of crap, so he gave my uncle a good beating until he told the truth. The truth is that my uncle didn't have a car, so he stole my dad's car to go and meet with some drug dealers. My uncle owed the dealers money but didn't have any. My uncle drove off, but the dealer shot up the car, intending to kill him. The police were never called. My uncle was lucky that time, but later on, my uncle's addiction was taking a toll on his health, and later developed pneumonia. The years of drug abuse weakened his body. He was unable to fight the pneumonia and ultimately died. It is a very hard thing to live with, the fact that I never got to know my uncle. Due to the drugs. Oh yeah, and to those drug dealers who tried to kill my uncle. I hope you sickos rot in jail, where you belong. When I was younger, I'd go visit my grandparents all the time. They lived in a one-floor house with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage, and I always got a horrible feeling when it was going to close. And let me add that this was a newer house that was about 6 years old. Now, during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there, even when I was with someone I didn't like. I remember going down there with my grandma to help with something. She had to run upstairs because someone rang the doorbell. She said she would be right back, even though she knew how I felt about being down there alone, but I nodded and said okay. She was gone and I was alone, and I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move and I didn't want to. Even though the lights were on now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The lights started to flicker and I started to hear noises and what sounded like talking, and it was not coming from upstairs, but in the storage room. I heard someone say my name. Here is the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was confused as hell. How am I hearing her when she is upstairs? I didn't want to move, but me being the curious one, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, the worse the bad feeling came. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. I wanted to run upstairs and hide, go home somewhere that wasn't the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. My grandma's voice asking me to open the door to help her. So I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. I couldn't hear anything but faint laughing that felt like forever. But then the laughing stopped, and the lights turned back on in the basement, and I felt a little bit better with the lights back on. But the downside is, I could see a little more in the storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room, and my grandma hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is there a clown doll? I have no damn idea. Then the lights turned back on in the storage room. I saw red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and blacked out, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the couch. My grandma looking at me and asking if I was okay. I have no idea if it was real or a dream, but it sure as hell felt real. I am a 19-year-old female, and at the time that all of this happened to me, I was 17. So just to give some long and necessary background, I was and still dating a guy named Kyle. We shared a small group of friends. We were all pretty close to each other. We did almost everything together, especially when it involved smoking weed and doing some other harder substances. They were pretty chill and trustworthy friends, or so I thought. Anyways, one day, 2 weeks before my junior year started, I was hanging out with the group at one of their houses, and I just so happened to fall asleep after a while of being there. I woke up probably 5 minutes later to one of my friends touching my inner thigh. Just to note, I was the only female in the group, and my boyfriend wasn't there when this occurred. He was at show choir practice. He couldn't have been there even if he wanted to. When the friend touching me noticed I woke up, he immediately stopped, and I ran into the bathroom crying. I've been raped and sexually assaulted before, so just going through it again isn't the greatest feeling. A few minutes passed by and I left the bathroom. I pulled one of my friends aside and told him what happened. His response shocked me. He said he saw what happened, but he didn't stop him. I don't know why he didn't, and I guess I'll never know. But that same friend told me not to tell Kyle, because he didn't want any friendships ruined. Well, I obviously told Kyle after show choir practice, and he was understandably pissed off. We've come to the agreement that we will no longer be friends with them anymore. A few days went by, still avoiding the group, and we would receive a lot of messages from them, but they were shocking, hurtful messages saying I'm being overdramatic, that it was my fault that it happened. Just act like nothing ever happened. He didn't really sexually assault me, and so on. I was pretty destroyed reading all of those messages coming from those so-called friends. But for some stupid reason, we all became friends again when school started. I know what you're thinking. Why would we go back to that shitty group of friends? I guess our only lame excuse is that we hate confrontation and we wanted things to go back to normal. I wanted to feel normal again. Well, obviously, it wasn't the best idea taking back those friends, especially the one who touched me. Because it started to really affect me mentally, I became super depressed. I developed really bad trust issues with everyone, including my boyfriend. I would constantly have panic attacks throughout the day. I started self-harming again. I was extremely suicidal, and I was failing all of my classes because I rarely showed up to school. The school attendants and staff had no idea what was wrong with me. I would refuse to tell them and my family. But one day came around and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told my family, and at first they were supportive, but then it quickly changed. I don't really want to go into the details, but for a long time, I felt so alone. Later on, around November 2017, my boyfriend did something behind my back with another girl. He didn't cheat on me. He just sold some weed to her. But for some odd reason, I mentally got worse. I just didn't know how to cope with anything that has and was happening to me. I started mentally abusing my boyfriend, like extremely bad to where he hated himself. And I think at some point he even became suicidal. Deep down, it made me happy. I wanted someone to feel pain too. But it got so bad to where we broke up twice, but then got back together the same day each time. Now fast forward to around February 2018. One night, that's when it happened. I was having trouble sleeping and it was getting late. I also had school the next morning, so I was getting pretty frustrated. Finally, around 1 a.m., I started dozing off. I found myself awake probably about 10 to 15 minutes later. I noticed a tall, dark figure standing across the room in my closet. At first, I thought it was my older brother messing with me, because he's done stuff like this before. But as I tried to say his name, I couldn't. That's when I realized I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. So as I'm staring at this figure in my closet, wondering what the fuck is happening, the figure started moving closer to me. And then I noticed it. Kinda looks like it was floating towards me. I could feel myself panicking, but I couldn't move or say anything. So when the tall figure reached the side of my bed, I kid you not, it bent over and grabbed my nose. Now I couldn't breathe through my nose or my mouth. I'm just staring at this dark figure. Its face was so close to mine, but I couldn't make out any features. I can feel my heart trying to break out of my chest. My lungs are hurting like hell because I couldn't breathe. I legitimately thought I was going to die, but suddenly, I quickly sat up, gasping for air, looking around my room for that figure, but it wasn't there. I was scared. I was so scared. I didn't know what happened. I thought I just had the most realistic nightmare of my life. I mean, I guess that's kind of what happened. The next morning, when my boyfriend picked me up for school, I told him about the realistic nightmare. He said, "That's creepy," and that was that. A few weeks later, I brought it up to my older brother, and that's when he told me that I actually had sleep paralysis. I had no clue what sleep paralysis is, but after hearing his definition of it and doing some research, I was really freaked out. I read online that stress, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and some other things can cause sleep paralysis. I realized that everything that had happened to me sort of recently played a big part in my sleep paralysis episode that night. I would be lying if I said I didn't have trouble sleeping for a while after that. But I eventually got over it. But every now and then, I do get a little nervous to go to sleep. Fast forward to 2020 now. Kyle and I are doing really well, better than ever. We are renting our own apartment. We have 2 cats, and they are absolutely amazing. Our 3-year anniversary is next month, and we are extremely excited. On another note, September 22nd, 2019, I was diagnosed with extreme depression and anxiety disorder, but I now go to therapy and take medications to help with that. I have never felt better and happier. Oh, and in case you are wondering, we are no longer hanging with those shit friends anymore.